House of the Interpreter. So we left off last week going through the wicket gate, and then in the wicket gate, oh, yes, we are in luck. What do you got?
I got lots. House of Interpreters,
okay, cool.
And Giant Despair.
Giant Despair is for tomorrow. And what's the other one? That just goes in the back. All right. And grab one. Okay, pass those around. Okay, so we're going to be in this one for a couple weeks. It's thick. There's a lot here, and we are not going to do it justice. It's considered some of the best literature of all time. Just could you leave it cracked because it's hot? It's some of the best literature considered in the English language. So it's not just you're going to love the pictures in it, but actually it's some of the best literature too. Cheever, who is a commentator, said it would be difficult to find 12 consecutive pages in the English language that contain such volumes of meaning in such beautiful and instructive lessons with such heavenly imagery in so pure and sweet a style and with so thrilling an appeal to the best affections of the heart as these pages. So this is some incredible stuff. You're going to love it. There'll be a few pictures that'll appeal to you and a few pictures that'll be kind of like, okay, that's cool. But that's fine. That's just what it is. Now, we left off last week with Christian coming through the wicket gate. And we said that Goodwill flung open the gate and grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him through across the threshold. Remember that? What was that a picture of? You guys remember what that was? He's been walking through the valley and then he got grabbed and he pulled through. What just happened?
Christ saved him.
Yeah, that was his moment of salvation, right? Now we said that that's after God has convicted him in the city of destruction, brought him across the plain, rescued him from this Mount Sinai. All those things happened at God's hand by God's purpose, and then he brings him to the gate. And who brings him across the gate? Well, God pulls him across the gate, right? Did Christian have an act in that? Sure, he was walking the whole time, but who was really sovereignly planning his steps? Who was sovereignly bringing him and actually pulled him across the threshold? Well, that was God. You can see Bunyan's subtle sovereignty even though we're watching a Christian walk. Okay, so that's the picture here. Now, as he gets across the threshold, Goodwill, who is Jesus Christ, says, go to the house of the interpreter and he will instruct you. And remember, in the house of the interpreter, we're going to say is the Holy Spirit because it's... well, for a number of reasons. We're going to skip that a little bit, but some people might say that it's just a good, faithful pastor. And it is, to a degree. But you're looking at some of these lessons that are incredibly important, and they're foundational. They are the core of what Christians need to believe, if you want to look at it that way. This is Bunyan's opinion of what Christians need to believe as they start off their walk. And so this stuff is foundational. We would go back to John... I think it's John 16, where he talks about he will come and speak to you and he will give you clarity. So that's my paraphrase of the Holy Spirit. So since we're in a hurry, we're going to skip through a little bit. We're going to jump to page 3. Sir, said Christian, I am a man that am come from the city of destruction and I'm going to Mount Zion. And I was told by the man that stands at the gate at the head of this way, that if I called here, you would show me excellent things, such as would help me in my journey. Interpreter said, that come in, I will show thee, which will be profitable to thee. So he commanded his man to light the candle and bid Christian to follow him. Now you're going to see this kind of repeatedly, that it's not until Christian gives his testimony of who he is and where he's from that the light is then turned on, right? So it's after Christian comes to the Holy Spirit and he says, show me what it is, and then what happens at the acknowledgement? Well, then the light is shown. Does that make sense? So you're going to find a lot of times, why is it in the New Testament that you see often, knock and it will be answered, ask and you will receive? What does that tell you? Tell me kind of some of the things that come to your mind as you think those kind of things. Because we know when we preach from the pulpit, God's sovereign. And we preach from the pulpit that God is good. And he is Jehovah Rapha, that healer. Help. Okay, that one didn't work out so well. But there's the idea that God's going to provide for me, right? So why does he say then, ask and you will be given? Knock and it will be open to you.
The Christian life is not passive. And of course, Pilgrims Progress is written from the human perspective. So it's not, we know in the fullness of God's counsel that God is sovereign. But
Right.
from our perspective, we can't just be like, I'll sit back and wait for him to just fall in my lap.
Yeah, that's a great summary, right? We know that God is sovereign, and yet are we allowed to just sit there and float? Is there any truth to let go and let God? Yeah, there is. There's just a little bit. That was a trick question. But there is. But there's a large part of the New Testament that talks about us going and doing, making our calling and election sure, going out and loving our brothers, going out and providing for the poor and the widow. Remember in James, you can say, "Hey, go and be warm," but does that do anything? No, you got to go out and do something. Not because God isn't sovereign, but because he works through us to accomplish his will. And so you have to go out and do. So a lot of times he waits until you ask before he gives. He waits until you knock before you open. In this case, Bunyan will continue to illustrate this throughout the book, that God will be patient. He will never let you go. You will never fall off the deep end by any means. But at the same time, he may let you kind of stew. He may let you kind of, you got to remember the slough? Sometimes you got to kind of swim through the muck until you realize that there were stairs the whole time, but you didn't bother to look. So it wasn't that you were lost in the slough, but he let you kind of sit in there for a little bit longer than you may have had to. Right? Same thing here. It wasn't until Christian summarized his testimony before the light was finally turned on. Does that make sense? That's God's sovereignty just as much as anything else. So here he goes. Okay, these are kind of some. There's going to be 7 different stories. Each one's going to deal with some different topics. Now we're going to try to get through. I was hoping to get through 4 today and then 3 next week. Kind of see where it goes. We'll just stop when we get to the end of the class, and then we'll finish off the rest of them next week. We could spend a lot more time than we have on these pictures, so we're not going to. We're going to summarize them. The other thing that's going to be important here is the much more challenging ones are next week. So just so you know. Okay. All right. So he had him into a private room and bid his man open a door. The which when he had done, Christian saw the picture of a very grave person hang up against the wall, and this was the fashion of it. It had eyes lifted up to heaven, and the best of books in his hand. The law of truth was written upon his lips. The world was behind his back. It stood as if it pleaded with men, and a crown of gold did hang over his head. Now, there's a lot of pictures in there, but let's try to pick out some of the ones that really stand out. First of all, it's a very grave person. Do you remember what grave means? Serious. But what does it also not mean?
Not necessarily without joy.
Right, not without joy, right, but it's serious. This is not a man given to levity. It doesn't mean that he's no fun, it just means that he's not frivolous. Okay? It was on this wall that was up against the wall. Now, the fashion of it, he had eyes lifted up to heaven, the best of books in his hand. Now, what would that indicate? First of all, what is the best of books? Okay. And then the fact that it's in his hand, what would that indicate? He's a man of the book, and it's to be used, right? It's right here. I'm ready to go, right? It's like the phone in my children's hand. It is never far from being used, right? Yesterday, Mike and I are sitting on the couch watching a movie, and just like in the movie, I just feel like keep getting this vibration coming from me because he was sitting right next to me. It's because he had his phone in his pocket, and I don't know if it was Instagram or text messages or what, but there's a lot of vibrating going on between the two of us at that point. Okay, so he has the best of books in his hand. The law of truth was written upon his lips. Now, same idea. What would that tell you?
Well, that he knew God's word.
He knew it because you can't say what you don't. Okay, that's not true. Generally, you say what you know, but what else? The fact that it's on his lips means that it's readily available, and that it is spoken. You see what I'm saying? It's one thing to know. It's one thing to have it ready. It's another thing to actually let it fly. Does that make sense? How often do we get You know what you want to say. You know the truth. Somebody has said something that you know you want to respond to, but because of fear or whatever the situation is, it just gets stuck right here in your throat and you can't quite get it out, right? This man has the word of truth on his lips. It's what he speaks. It comes out with regularity. Okay? So we have the best of books in his hands, the law of truth written on his lips. The world was behind his back. That's a great picture. What does that mean? What does a picture indicate to you?
That he's not taken by the things of the world. It's not primary.
Good. It's not primary. He's not taken by them. What else has he done?
He's got his back towards us. That means he's not put it behind him.
He's got his back. So he's put it behind him. He's walking away from it. Now, what does it also tell you? The fact that the world is behind him. It's a subtle picture, but it's a little bit different. Has he left the world? Is he on some weird ethereal plane? Is he become one with nature and he's left the world behind? Is that what Bunyan's saying? No. He knows where the world is because he's turned his back to it. Does that make sense? There's an identification of what is and what isn't God, and I'm leaving what isn't behind. That's the picture. Okay? Finally, it stood as if it pleaded with men. Okay, let's just stop there. It stood with it as it pleaded with men. Okay? We'll talk more about that in a second. And then a crown of gold did hang over his head. Now, the crown of gold, what is that reminiscent of, biblically?
Many times in the Bible, it talks, like Paul would talk about if you live
Faithfully.
worthy of your calling, there will be a crown of life at the end. Or in Revelation, sometimes it mentions the believers when they came to the throne
Good.
room. They had like the elders, the 24 elders had the crown.
Had the crown, right? And what did the crown signify? Why do they have a crown? Good. It was a reward, but keep going. Who gets crowned? Remember, this is 17th century England. Royalty. And how did you become a king? Come on, Monty Python.
Because we are adopted as...
Hold on. How do you become a king? You're born into it. All right. Now, how do we, who are not born into it, become kings and queens of Narnia? We're adopted, right? So when we see that these people have crowns, it's partly, we have one picture that they are being rewarded for their faithfulness, and partly they're also crowned because they are co-heirs with Christ. We are God's children. We are of that family. We talked about the whole Abrahamic promise, how we are put into the Abrahamic promise through faith. So therefore, all the promises given to Abraham are given to us. Now, as children of God, as fellow co-heirs with Christ, all the things that were his are ours. Not as attributes. We don't become Christ, but we are co-heirs with him so that we gain undeservedly the benefits that are given to Jesus. Does that make sense? So you can see where this picture of this crown over his head tells you quite a bit. It tells you that this man is faithful, that he's run the race, that he has earned, to whatever degree you want to use that term, he has earned his spot amongst the faithful. At the same time, he is also God's faithful servant. He is a faithful man who's enjoying the benefits of Christ. But is it on his head? It's over his head, indicating he hasn't received it yet, but it's just a matter of time. Okay? So there's our picture. Christian said, "What meaneth this?" And the interpreter said, "The man whose picture this is one of 1,000. He can beget children, travail in birth with children, and nurse them himself when they are born." Okay, so let's talk about that. We'll come back to the 1 in 1,000 in a second, but he can beget children, travail in birth with children, and nurse them himself when they are born. Besides, it's kind of a weird picture, but what's he trying to get at? What do you think?
It's a faithful pastor.
Yeah. This is a faithful pastor. Does that make sense? Do you see the picture? He can beget children. He shares the gospel. He watches faith grow, start. He travails in birth with them. He helps them come to faith. And then he nurses them when they are born. So now he's starting to teach them and feed them, okay? And that makes him 1 in 1,000. 1 in 1,000. Which would indicate what? Rarity. Uniqueness. Uniqueness. These men are not found every street corner. These men are hard to find. So the fact that he's showing it to him tells him you need to go find one, right? And whereas thou seest him with his eyes lifted up to heaven, the best of books in his hands, and the law of truth writ on his lips, is to show thee that his work is to know and unfold dark things to sinners. Even as also thou seest him stand as if he pleaded with men, and whereas thou seest the world is cast behind him, and a crown hangs over his head, that is to show thee that citing and despising the things that are present, for the love he hath for his master's service, he is sure in the world that comes next to have glory for his reward. So you can kind of see he's not just a preacher of the gospel, he is a liver of the gospel. He is a believer in the gospel. He is a man that you would want to emulate. So here's the question. Why is this the first picture that the interpreter, that Bunyan wants us to see? The first thing as this man comes through the threshold is to show him a picture of a faithful pastor. Why?
Because new Christians, as well as the mature ones, need someone that's teaching them godly truth throughout their life.
We always want a mentor. Everybody adopts some kind of mentor or teacher, right? New Christians included. Now the question is not whether you need one. The question is not whether you will look for one. What is the real question? What will they look like? Who will it be? Who is the man you should go find? Does that make sense? Because especially now, how many of us, especially the internet, how many different teachers do we adopt for all the wrong reasons? Right? I mean, we go to great schools. I really appreciate the work that our teachers have done. But the things that are demanded of our school system are just ridiculous. They really want our school systems to be everything to every child, which is, of course, impossible. Everybody knows it, but we keep trying anyways. Because we desperately want to find someone that's going to teach our kids the right things. I appreciate that. But it's not going to be found in the school system. Right? This is what we're talking about here. Same kind of concept from Bunyan. We all know you will have a teacher. The question is, who will that look like? Well, this is the man it should look like. It should be one that can unfold dark things to sinners. One that has a crown of glory hanging over his head because he knows what's coming next. Now, said the interpreter, I have showed thee this picture first, because the man whose picture this is the only man whom the Lord of the place, whither thou art going, hath authorized to be thy guide in all difficult places thou mayest meet with in the way. So the only man that thou should follow. Now this is important, okay? Because this is 17th century England. What Bunyan just said has some significant implications. First of all, he said he's 1 in 1,000, okay? We talked about that being uniqueness. Now, does that mean one only? Did 17th century English people believe that there was only 1,000 people total on the earth? No. Okay? So when he said there's 1 in 1,000, that means they're unique. But is there only one? Good. Now, in Anglicanism, to a degree, and Catholicism for sure, what is there only one of? One authority, whether it be the Pope or the Archbishop of Canterbury. Does that make sense? Or the king. Technically it's the king, right? But when he says this is the only man who's authorized, even though he's not a one of, he is a unique man, absolutely. But when he says this is the only man that you should adopt as your head, do you see the implications for what he's trying to tell the people? What he's trying to tell a Christian? It's not a man. It's not the Pope. It's not a far exalted leader. It's a godly man who believes that Christ comes first. That's the man. That's the only one that Christ has given you to guide you. Not the Pope because he's the Pope. Here's the pastor that's faithful. His qualities, his belief, his faithfulness is what qualifies him to be your teacher. Not electing by cardinals. Does that make sense? No smoke, different colors, nothing like that. His faithfulness, his attitude, his heart. That's what qualifies him. Make sense? So, and bear well what thou hast seen, lest in the journey thou meet with some that pretend to lead thee right, but their way goes down to death. Just keep that last sentence in mind as we go through the book, because you'll find a lot. There's a good quote here from Robert Murray McShane. He's writing to the Reverend Dan Edwards, as Edwards was, he became bishop of, forget where, but I trust you to have a pleasant time in Germany. I know you will, oh yeah, he was going to become a pastor to the Jews in Germany. But this is Robert Murray McShane, so we're talking a little while back. All right, moving on. Then he took him by the hand and led him into a very large parlor that was full of dust. Now, what's a parlor? Does anyone know? I had to look this one up. To me, it's where you put the pool table, but that's actually not the best explanation of it. What's a parlor?
Wasn't it your front room where you received guests?
Almost. It was definitely had to do with receiving guests, but keep going. 17th century England. How big were the houses in 17th century England? Did they measure them in square feet?
Small.
Quite small. In fact, how many rooms do they typically have? Not a lot, right? So here's a room specifically given to the receiving of guests. What does that tell you? Huh? Nope. Nothing to do with hospitality.
Kept clean.
Huh?
It's kept clean.
It's kept clean. You keep going. You have a room specifically for receiving guests.
It's the nicest room in the house.
It's the nicest room in the house, and keep going. Who had one? Who had one?
Rich.
Only the wealthy. Only the wealthy. Everybody else had a one-bedroom house. You don't have a parlor when you have a one-bedroom house, right? We all go back to when we all lived by ourselves in college, and you shared a room with 4 or 5 guys. You didn't have a receiving room. You had whatever you had, and people came over and sat down. The fortunate part is most of the people you came over lived in the same state, so it didn't really matter. Everybody just kind of piled in, right? But in this case, we're talking about a supreme, kind of expensive place. You are an upscale family with a receiving room, and here it is, okay? And you're coming in, so you would expect, like you guys said, this is guests coming over. It has nothing to do necessarily with hospitality specifically, but the idea being that this is a special room where people come in, and so you're going to keep it pretty decorated. You're going to keep it fancy. This is the place where everything went to, right? Okay, yeah, I was going to say something about Downton Abbey. The idea that they had to keep certain rooms spotless and clean because that's where you brought the guests as they came in. That's the idea of a parlor. Now let's look at this parlor. It's a very large parlor. Okay, which means it's a very grandiose, but it was full of dust because it had never been swept. Now, do you see the contrast, the irony of the situation? Here's this grand room that's ultimately decorated. It's made to have incredible guests. It's a very big, expansive, decorated, brilliant colors, gold, everything else, and yet it's covered with dust. It's never been cleaned. Get the picture? We're going to talk about what that is in a second, but you get hopefully that makes sense. The which, after he had reviewed a little while, the interpreter called for a man to sweep. Now, when he began to sweep, the dust began so abundantly to fly about that Christian had almost therewith been choked. Then said the interpreter to a Christian, had almost therewith been, I should read the next line. Then said the interpreter to a damsel that stood by, bring hither the water, and sprinkle the room. The which, when she had done, it was swept and cleansed with pleasure. All right. You guys get that part right. He sweeps, it goes into the air, she puts water on it, it works. Now what does this mean? The parlor is the heart of man that has never been sanctified by the sweet grace of the gospel. Okay? Now think about this. The parlor is the heart of man. Now what was the parlor? What was the parlor for? Why did Bunyan pick a parlor to represent the heart of man? Given the definition that we just had of a parlor.
What's a football here? Being that our heart is not in its heart fleshly state open to receiving and reception, and what a parlor room is used for to receive and
good.
It's kind of around that.
You are in the right track,
Okay.
but you keep going. It is a great room. We are made to receive. Look at the last sentence of his comment. You'll be fit for the King of glory to inhabit. So who's this large parlor meant to entertain? The King. Your heart, you were created not just to pour out your heart. You were created to be with God. You were created to be in fellowship. You were created to open your heart to Him. You were created for Him and for Him to enjoy you and you to enjoy Him. That's what you were created for. That's the picture. That's why everything was good. That's why God could walk with Adam in the garden and converse with him. That's what we are created for. That's what God desires of mankind. So that's the picture of a parlor. You are brilliantly and wonderfully made. Just like this parlor was brilliant and it was awesome and it was beautifully decorated, you are made, I just watched VeggieTales yesterday, you are made special. God made you special, right? And He loves you very much. Thanks. Right? That's how you were made. And it's a brilliant picture. The problem is what he says, the dust. You are never sanctified by the sweet grace of the gospel. The dust is his original sin and inward corruptions that have defiled the whole man. So you look at this beautiful parlor that was perfectly made, and yet it's covered. It's covered. It cannot escape this sticky, electrically static dust that sticks to everything. It gets into every nook and cranny, and it's disgusting. So the brilliance of this parlor is completely destroyed by the dust that covers everything. That makes sense? That's the picture. He that began to sweep it first is the law, but she that brought water and did sprinkle it is the gospel. Now whereas thou sawest that so soon the first began to sweep, the dust did so fly about the room by him, could not be cleansed, but that thou wast almost choked therewith. This is to show thee that the law, instead of cleansing the heart by its workings, from sin doth revive, put strength into, and increase it in the soul, even as it doth discover and forbid it, for it doth not give power to subdue. That's a lot of words, but just understand this. When a man took his broom and his dustpan, what was his goal? What did he desire to be the end state? That it be clean. And that the parlor look like magnificent again. Brilliant, right? But what actually ended up happening? The dust got into the air. Now keep going with that. What else happened to the dust as it got into the air? It got more powerful. It almost got belligerent, right? What happened to Christian as the dust got into the air? It's almost choked. So what happened to the man when, even though his intent, his desire, I should say, his desire was to pick up the dust, what ended up happening to the dust? Stirred it up, made it even worse, made it to the point where it almost choked Christian. So this is the law. What can the law do? It can show your filth. Keep going with that. What can it do? It can kill you. It magnifies. It is incredibly diagnostic. It does a great job of showing you exactly what's wrong with you. In fact, it can magnify it to the degree that you can't help but get choked by your own sin. Do you see what's happening? He came in and he meant to clean. Great. But what actually happened was made that dust, which was formerly just kind of standing around. It was gross, but at least it was all in place. And he started springing around to the point where it almost became belligerent. It was almost death to Christian. Does that make sense? It was in the air. He couldn't escape it. He noticed it more then than he ever did before. It was magnified. That's what the law does. And ultimately, did it clean the room? Did he clean a single speck of dust? Not a one. Not a one. Okay? Again, as thou sawest, the damsel sprinkled the room with water, upon which it was cleansed with pleasure. This is to show thee that when the gospel comes in the sweet and precious influences thereof of the heart, then I say, even as thou sawest the damsel lay the dust by sprinkling the floor with water, so is sin vanquished and subdued, and the soul made clean through the faith of it, and consequently fit for the King of glory to inhabit. That's all one sentence. That's impressive. Okay? But the point being this, as you guys, so I'm driving down 470, as they've been doing all the construction in the summer, they get all the dirt and they flatten it out and everything. Has anyone ever noticed that there's a truck that goes by on top of it, and the only thing that truck does is it has a big sprinkler on the back that just gets the dirt wet? Why would it do that? Keep it from going in, right? The dust, the water grabs the dust, pulls it to the ground. Chemically, water is okay. Just understand, chemically, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why you use soap and water when you clean, right? And in this case, the water actually will grab the dust, because the dust actually tends to be electrically static, and water is actually electric as well. And so what happens is it actually grabs it. It holds it. That's why water works so well in cleaning. So water grabs the dust and it holds it in one place, and then she goes around and just easily cleans it up. And as she cleans it up, what's revealed underneath it? The glory of the room. Okay? Now, did the room do anything to clean itself? Right? What's doing the cleaning in the room? Well, the damsel, or in our illustration, the gospel. The gospel first takes in and subdues it, and then it progressively cleans it up. Okay? It's a picture of justification and sanctification. The gospel has come and grabbed all the dust, grabbed it in place, and now is held prisoner to the water from the damsel, and then the sanctification comes in as she cleans it up. Little by little, cleans it up. And little by little, the glory of this room becomes more and more apparent. You become more and more a picture of what God created you to be. That's the picture of this room. Make sense? The law didn't do it. The law just made it worse. The gospel comes and actually effectively cleans the house and makes it ready for the king. Cool? And there's plenty more here. The scriptures that you want to go through, all these things that are all pictures. We don't have time to go through each of the scriptures he goes through, because there's a lot. But just understand there's some good things in here as far as how this works and what it means and so on. All right. Any questions so far? This is rapid fire, I know, but it's what it is. All right. Next picture. I saw, moreover, in my dream that the interpreter took him by the hand and had him into a little room where sat two little children, each one in his chair. The name of the elder was Passion, and the name of the other, Patience. So which one's older? Passion. And what does passion mean?
You go from excitement and vigor to anger or strength of emotion, I guess.
Strength of emotion, okay. What else?
Conviction would be a part of passion.
Could be. Conviction could be a part of passion. But what is passion? What comes to your mind? Uncontrollable urges. How about that? When somebody's passionate, they cannot contain themselves. They are super desirous of whatever the object is. It could be conviction. It could be something hopefully good, but a lot of times it's not, right? And so passion is this idea that I just have something inside of me that wants to run right now. I have to have it right now. Now, if that's the gospel, be passionate. If it's everything else, not so much, okay? But that's the picture of passion. The other one is patience. What does patience mean? Love is patient. Meaning what?
It waits.
Good.
It's controlled.
It's controlled and it waits. What does it wait for?
The right time or for something better.
Good. And what does it do in the meantime? What does it not do in the meantime?
Act.
It doesn't act. True. And
It doesn't become bitter.
it doesn't become bitter. It doesn't have an issue with waiting. Right? When we say love is patient, that doesn't mean that love bites its tongue until it bleeds, but it takes no action. Right? That's not the idea of patience. Okay? Parents, we do that. I do that. I sit there and I want to say it and I won't. But it's not because I'm patient. It's because I just didn't say it. I want to grow in this patience, this idea that I'm calm, that I'm collected, I understand the situation, but I'm not reacting to the situation. I'm thinking it through, I'm praying it through, and I react as the time is right. Make sense? That's patience. It's believing that all things will work out in God's timing. I just need to be in tune with God's timing. And that's patience. So we have passion and we have patience. I want it right now. I'm willing to wait until God's ready. That's our children. Let's see. Passion seemed to be very much discontented. I can't imagine why. But patience was very quiet. Then Christian asked, and if you want to see this, go to Target in the toy section around Christmas time, and you will see an illustration of passion. I guarantee you. Okay? With very little patience, a lot of passion. Then Christian asked, what is the reason of the discontent of passion? Interpreters answered, the governor of them would have him stay for the best things till the beginning of the next year. But he will have it all now. But patience is willing to wait. So the governor of the house, the one that owns everything, the one that controls all the treasure and everything else says, if you just wait till next year, I'll give you everything. Okay, kind of prodigal son-ish, right? So passion says, I want it right now. Patience says, okay, I'll willing to wait. I'm hearing you. Then I saw that one came passion and brought him a bag of treasure and poured it out at his feet, the which he took it up and rejoiced therein, and withal laughed patience to scorn. So he got his right then, and then he pointed at patience and said, you sucker, haha, I got all mine. But I beheld but a while, and he had lavished all away and had nothing left him but rags. All right. Expound this matter more fully to me. So this is what interpreter says. So he said, these two lads are figures. Passion of the men of this world, and patience of the men that which is to come. For as here thou seest, passion will have all now this year, that is to say, in this world, so are the men of this world. They must have all their good things now. They cannot stay till next year, that is, until the next world, for their portion of good. Okay, so Romans 1. Though they knew what God said, though they knew that there is a creator, what did they do? What did men do in Romans 1?
Worship the created rather than the creator.
They did. What did they do before they did that? They did not honor him as God, but keep going. They suppressed the truth. Does that make sense? The reason that they're able to worship the creation over the creator is because they suppress what they do know so that they can go after whatever they want. Make sense? It's like convincing myself that this really isn't true so I can go do whatever I want. We all do it. That's exactly what that happens here. So passion, even though he may know better, even though all the evidence is given to him, even though he has all the same information as patience, says, I do not want those rules. I do not like those rules. I want it now on my schedule, in my timing, and I want all of it. Give it to me now. Is no one going to jump in with me? Beruga? Willy Wonka? I want it now. Right? She was a bad egg. Remember? The old one's much better. Gene Wilder, much better. All right? So, That is to say that in this world, the men of this world, they must have all their good things now, they cannot wait. The proverb, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, is more authority with them than in the divine testimonies of the good of the world to come. Now, the fact that the proverb, one in the hand is worth two in the bush, this is 400 years ago, and they're using the same proverb. I thought that was kind of cool, okay? So that tells you that one's been around for a while. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush is of more authority to them than all the divine testimonies. Right? So I have this right now instead of having more, but I have to wait. That's the idea of having one in the hand instead of two in the bush. So that's what they consider to be their authority. What I have, something that I have is better than anything that I'd wait for. But as thou sawest that he had quickly lavished all away, and had presently left him nothing but rags, so it will be with all such men at the end of this world. So he got his treasure, he grabbed it, he ran with it, he loved it. Now remember, the treasure isn't just rags, right? We're talking about good stuff. This is treasure that was poured out at his feet that he enjoyed. So don't understand this as saying they took whatever garbage was given to him and he ran with it. He was given good things. Okay? The treasure is not inconsequential. But what's the difference between what patience is waiting for and what passion was given? Okay, it was giving something fleeting, which means, what's the difference? Earthly versus heavenly. You guys ever heard of the concept of better and best? What did passion get? Well, he got the better. What's that?
He got okay or good or...
Yeah, maybe even great.
Patience got best.
Patience is waiting for the best. Makes sense? So passion got what he wanted, right? But it was a compromise, essentially. Then said Christian, now I see that patience has the best wisdom, that upon many accounts, first because he stays for the best things, second also because he will have his glory of his when the other has nothing but rags. So Christian gets it. That's impressive. Yeah, you're right. He's waiting for the best, and he will have it when his old treasure dies out. Patience will still have his. Now, here's what the interpreter says. Nay, you may add another, to wit, the glory of the next world will never wear out, but these are suddenly gone. Therefore, passion had not so much reason to laugh at patience because he had his good things first, as patience will have to laugh at passion because he had his best things last. Now, so fundamentally what interpreter is trying to tell him is this. The gifts, it's not just about who had the better gift. It's not just about who had the longer gift. It's not just about who had the gift first or not. Think about the quality of the gift. Think beyond just who gets it now and I can't wait to get to heaven, all these kind of things. Think about what is actually being given. What did passion settle for versus what did patience want? What did they desire? The nature of these gifts is fundamentally different. Not just the getting of the gifts. The nature of the gift is fundamentally different. Okay? As patience will have to laugh at passion because he had the best things last. For first must give place to last because last must have his time to come, but last gives place to nothing, for there is not another to succeed. So basically when we know there's going to be a succession, you always want to be last. He therefore that hath his portion first must needs have a time to spend it, but he that hath his portion last must have it lastingly. Therefore it is said of Dives, thou in thy lifetime receivest thou good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things, but now he is comforted and thou art tormented. So Christian says, I perceive it not best to covet things that are now, but to wait for things to come. He said the truth. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. But though this be so, yet since things present and our fleshly appetite are such near neighbors one to another, and again because things to come and carnal sense are such strangers to one another, therefore it is that the first of these so suddenly fall into amity, and the distance is so continued between the second. Now, that's a lot. But get this, we already talked about this. The nature of the gifts are different. So, why is he telling him this? Why is he showing him this picture of passion and patience? Besides being interesting, why is he showing it to him?
That's going to be the challenge as he walks the rest of the life of being challenged with the now versus the future.
Because this is a realistic challenge. And what is the nature of the challenge?
Delayed gratification
Versus
versus instant gratification.
instant gratification versus delayed gratification. So how do we fight the battle of instant gratification versus delayed gratification? We have an illustration that passion got his treasure right away, but he kind of wasted it away because it really wasn't the best. But patience waited, and he's going to have the best when the time comes. How do you fight that battle in your life on a daily basis? It takes patience, but how do you have patience? What's the key to patience?
Having your heart set on the end of the Lord.
Okay. What do you have to be convinced of to have patience?
That there is a better reward.
What's that?
Knowing that God's in control and wants the best for you.
That God's in control, wants the best for you, and that there is something better. Will you wait knowing that what passion got, you're just going to get the same thing later on? Is that worth waiting for? No, it's not, right? What do you have to be convinced of if you want to wait? That whatever is worth waiting for is worth waiting for, right? That's how we fight this battle. If we want to fight the battle between instant gratification and delayed gratification, we have to believe that delayed gratification leads to something better than what the instant gratification promises. Otherwise, there's no point. You will never last long unless you believe that what God has in store for you in the end is better than anything you have right now. And I know we all have our sayings, and we know we all have all those kind of things that we all lean on, but it comes back to believing that what's in heaven, sitting around God's throne, worshiping Him, seeing the infinite grandeur and majesty of God, being completely restored to holiness, to wearing robes of white, of fellowshipping with other saints around the throne of God, looking at all the angels, enjoying this perfect cube of the new heavens and the new earth. All those kind of things are much better than seeing my kids grow up, having the church be this wonderful place, listening to the perfectly tuned piano, right? Having good health, helping my brother who is in need. Do you notice how I didn't pick things that are obviously evil? Notice I didn't pick sex or money or drugs. We all know those are wrong. But are we willing to wait and say heaven and worship around God's throne is even better than watching my kids grow up, watching my kids get married, watching the church function in an efficient manner? Can we leave all those things behind, not because they're not good, but because what's in heaven is best? Do you see the difference? If there's anything in this world that you consider to be best, you're not going to wait. You're not going to wait. The key to patience is believing, convinced that what's in store is better than anything I could have now. Not to say that what I have now is bad, that's better. Does that make sense? That was the key. And that's the key that Christian has to learn. What is in store is better than anything you're going to have right now. And if that's the case, if what I have in store isn't better, then what's that going to get Christian to keep doing? I got to keep walking. I got to keep going. I have to keep moving past this. Nothing along this journey is worth stopping for because what's best is at the end. So why would I want to stop? You don't. Keep going. Does that make sense? So that's the lesson of passion and patience. All right. So next week, we'll take Christian by the hand. There's a fire burning against a wall, and there was one trying to throw water on it and quench it, yet it wouldn't go out. So we're going to start there next week. And then from there, there's the man that has to fight across the bridge to get into the castle, which is between the next two are my favorites. I can't decide which one's the best. And then we get into the one about the man in the iron cage, which causes everyone to question Bunyan's theology. And then there gets to the man that has a bad dream. So those are the four stories left. Okay, the one, the fire, unquenchable fire, you'll like a lot. The one that crosses across the bridge, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you'll love that one. And then the man in the iron cage is the one that's going to be a struggle. Okay, it is, and so you have to leave your systems behind, all right, theological systems, and let's just talk about what Bunyan is saying and what he's not saying. Okay, that's going to be important to understand that one. All right, so any questions? That was a fire hose. I know it was, but hopefully it was good. Okay.